want to thank the chairman. With that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Miller, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this hearing on the issue of stock trading in Congress, and to our witnesses for being here. Appreciate it. As a member of Congress, we should be held to a higher standard of personal and professional behavior. And I was just thinking about the lack of the fear of God among members. It is appointed unto man once to die and then the judgment, and we are not going to take a pile of money to hell with us. And people that are wantonly treacherous, that are disloyal to their constituents, to our country, to future generations should be held accountable. They should be put to shame. The actions of this body do have a direct impact on the public's faith in this institution, and our constituents must be able to trust that their elected representatives are using their positions to serve the American people and not ourselves. When the stock portfolios of members of Congress regularly beat the S&P 500 and members leave the office with vastly higher net worths than when they arrived, the public is right to be alarmed. So, Mr. Copeland, do you believe that the current law regulating stock trading by members and key employees provides for adequate deterrence of wrongdoing and sufficient enforcement when members or staff fail to comply and they don't fear God, they are disloyal to the country and their constituents? This is disgraceful.
The short answer to that is no. I don't think the adequate law, the current law is adequate.
So when we talked about fines and basically a flick on the cheek, they need to be adequate. So a dollar amount, a percentage amount of a fine would be better, right, than a dollar amount?
I have no problem with the disgorgement. I mean, again, that's for a violation of a reporting rule under the current rule, but the current law. But I have no problem with the disgorgement. And if it's a big trade, you'd be really, really careful with it. If it's a small trade, okay. And that's really not what we're as much worried about.
Okay. When examining the numerous proposals, Mr. Copeland, to restrict member stock trading, how do we ensure that enforcement is impartial and evenly applied to all members?
Yeah, that's sort of the rub there. I mean, part of the problem is the enforcement mechanism, and we've reserved, the Stock Act reserves it to your own bodies, your own ethics offices, or independent committees set up under your own body. If you transfer that to the executive branch, there's always the concern of partisanship, but that can apply to this body as well. So the enforcement mechanisms really do matter there, and you've got to take that into account. But I think it's important. I think there's some evidence to suggest the self-policing isn't working well now, right? And so some of that may be substantive rules, and some of that may be process in terms of how you actually handle it. And so I'd think carefully about that process. I'm happy to work with the members on it.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Savickas, I asked the same question, as I believe it's critical that all members are held to the same standard, whether they are a first-term member or a certain former Speaker of the House, who I would note has not been mentioned once by the Democrat members of this committee, despite making over $100 million from her time in public service. So would you, in light of restricting stock trading, how do we make sure that enforcement is impartial and evenly applied to all members?
Yeah, I think it has to be far less subjective, and how that looks up to interpretation, whether it's an independent commission, remains to be seen. But I think the executive branch enforcement can be subjective and politicized, and the self-policing regime has not worked.
So would you support enforcement being led by an independent entity that would operate without interference from the legislative or executive branches?
Yeah, in principle, yes, reserving the right to look at any specific proposal.
Right. Thank you so much. And I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back.